A very good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where and when you're watching us from. My name is Mutathi Washirawanyaga, Mujiro wa bari ya Karigi, na gwehoka kuma ngongo ciothe iria ciumaga huho. Muri thayo, thayo, thayo. Today is a good day. It's a little bit rainy here in Nairobi, but it is the 24th of March and the year is 2024. And this is the state of the continent. So, we want to tell you what has been happening in the continent within the past week or so that you can be able to be informed. And as usual, I have the gang, the gentlemen in the house who will tell us how their week has been, how everything is before we get into what is happening in the continent. So I think I can start with Maina Lushasha. How are you?
I'm very fine. I'm fine. My week has been relaxed compared to these other weeks. I've had the chance to unwind, and I'm happy to be here to inform you of the happenings within our continent. Yeah.
Jeff Waheto?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeff Waheto. My week has not been so smooth. It's been very sad news, but I know the next week will be better.
Indeed, indeed. So I like to, you know, remind you that as Jeff is saying, it's still a sad moment for people, especially from Kenyatta University, who are still mourning 11 uh, students who died in a road accident. I remember last time I think I made a mistake. I stated 17, but that point of correction is 11. So we are still in spirit and we pray for everything to be okay. Nevertheless, in Uganda, some things have been happening in Uganda, and Uganda is always busy, the Pearl of Africa. And command of the military. It's a very controversial move. Country where may have people have been thinking, is Museveni trying to train his son, to groom his son, his eldest child, for the presidency? So it's something that has been it's a controversial topic either way, because Museveni's son, who's known as Kaine Rugaba, has recently been politicking, and he has been saying that it is high time. He has been in rally saying it is high time military leaders should be allowed to take political stands or moves. So it has been there. He has even started as an activist group called the Patriotic League of Uganda. And now, when his father has now appointed him as the the senior military in a senior military position, then it leads us to appointed him to be a top commander in the army of Uganda. It now brings in so many questions, because Museveni took power in 1986 by force, and he has been there. I think he's among the longest serving presidents in Africa. And now this is a topic that I know sparks many conversation. Mine, I don't know what you have to say on that.
Just a few days ago, we were talking about leaders and leadership in Africa, leadership and the youth. And I told you from where I come from, leadership is hereditary. And I don't come that far from Uganda. So I think it's just in the spirit of upholding our African traditions that he chose to maybe install his son in that position. Question is, yes, he might have installed his son, but is the son qualified? That is up to the Ugandan people to decide. But from where I sit, it's very hard to judge that situation. But in Uganda, it's not easy for people to make noise on such matters. We
Hmm.
heard of cases of people like Besigye, they are jailed, they're imprisoned. So in that country, it might not be as free as the case is in Kenya. And now to what I wanted to inform you guys about. There's been a heist in Ethiopia. Just the previous week, the Ethiopian bank, the central bank system shut down and people were able to withdraw money, unlimited amounts. And surprise, surprise, the people who withdrew the money were mostly university students. And this thing was so rampant to the point that they lost close to 40 million USD. That's almost 4 billion Kenyan shillings. And it was lost in a span of a few hours. And the news was spread through social media. In Kenya, we've had heists of people stealing credit, from Safaricom, people stealing bundles, but it has never reached this far, people stealing money from banks. So what was happening was people were going to ATM machines, and the machines were producing money without more than the people had in their accounts. So the government has been trying to follow up on that. But in their statement, they say this mostly students who stole the money will not be jailed for it. But otherwise, efforts are still in place to try and recover this money. I know, Jeff, you like money. And if you were to be in Ethiopia, I'm sure you would have been part of those people withdrawing money even though their accounts had none. Or what do you think on that, Jeff?
Uh, Thank you. Call is, I believe it will be hard to recover the money. Because you see, like campus students, they have debts like Fuliza here in Kenya. So the money will go just direct transacting. I believe it will be hard as I believe the government should just counter laws. And most sad stories in Kenya, as what Washira was talking about earlier, it's a sad story because 11 students died in a tragic accident. KU students near Maungu town, near Voi town. The bus was carrying 58 students. The 11 students died and 18 are still recovering, and two are in critical conditions. KU students were given a break of 4 days until up to today to mourn, and studies will continue tomorrow. It's a tragic accident. It's a sad story. These were young leaders, and we should keep our country in prayers.
Yeah, as Jeff has said, it is indeed a sad time, and I can see some comments coming in from our friend Fred Van Congo saying that Washira, it's year of our Lord, as my friend always calls it. There was a time I used to say it is the year of our Lord. These days, I think I have forgotten to say that. And then, anyway, it's a pleasure to always be here. Thanks for keeping the channel very live and active, guys. And you says, Mina, welcome back, my friend. While you're away, Jeff will tell us what he said. Anyway, thank you, Fred, for always being part of us and always being here. Moving on to other news is that there's something that we are following from Sudan, and I've been following this. Remember, there was also following something in Senegal, but also there's something that has been happening in Sudan. And I've been following it quite closely because the Sudan Paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, that is the RSF, has rejected proposed humanitarian aid route to Darfur. You know, remember the time, some time back, we were telling you about there are some negotiations that were bound to happen between the people of Sudan or the representative from Sudan and the UN agency. So what is happening right now? These RSF who are fighting the country's armed forces, they have rejected. They have rejected an agreement between the nation's military government and UN agency to deliver humanitarian aid into the war-torn Darfur region. So Darfur region, and now we are wondering. I thought these people were fighting for their people, but now when aid is coming, they are not really showcasing as if they are fighting for the people. So because right now what you can say is that what we know for sure is that most of them are in these conflict hotspots in Darfur, and the sad part is this: there is a lot of people who are now facing food insecurity or acute food insecurity. More than 18 million people, since the war began between the RSF and the Sudanese army, more than 18 million people, more than a third of the population are facing acute food insecurity. So it's something that is not really looking well, especially for the 18 million people. As much as we are hoping for peace to reign in the continent, sometimes you get to wonder because now I know we are fighting for various reasons, but sometimes I think it will be really nice if we such kind of things. Mine, I don't know what you think about this because, uh, yes, they are fighting for whatever reason they're fighting,
There
but
is sad.
food. Come on,
Yeah, indeed, the situation there is very sad because that region has been ravaged by war for a while now. And at the end of the day, end of it all, the generals and the leaders will sit down and talk about what came out of the war, while some woman deep in Sudan will wait for her martyred son to come back home. And it just goes to show, there's a Swahili proverb that says, "Fahali wawili wakipigana ziumiazo ni nyasi." So it's these common class citizens who suffer as a result of these wars. And from where we see it, the best you can do is be activists on, people these days are activists on social media. This is the best we could do. Maybe talk of their plight here and just pray for them that they'll find peace and know what it means to live in peace. And yeah, the situation back here in Kenya is not looking so good because doctors have been on strike for I think 11 days now, and people are suffering in hospitals. And I was looking at some of the reasons for this strike. They want a comprehensive medical cover, and then there was also this thing of medical interns being paid what to them is not enough for the services they offer, because they're only being paid I think 47,000 shillings, and 47,000 shillings for someone who studied medicine for all of 6 years does not seem fair at all. And both sides are not still willing to budge because the health CS said that these are cartels who are removed from the NHIF and who are trying to basically kick her out of office. And the doctors are saying she's incompetent and not good enough at her job. And it just goes back to what I was saying before. Fahali wawili wakipigana ziumiazo ni nyasi. Because the medical practitioners are in a fight with the government, and the people suffering are the common Kenyan citizens. And we just in Kenya, like I said before, I think all you can do is be activists and hope that these people will come together, sit down and come to a common solution to this problem, because we don't want to see Kenyans suffering. Because like Jeff said, students from KU had an accident just a few days ago, and if that's the situation in our country, just wonder where we're headed as a country. But we hope they'll find a solution to that, and we can move on from this and make it a learning point for us as Kenyans. Yeah.
Collins, that's a sad story because we have our brothers, our sisters at hospitals, and we cannot blame the doctors. The one to blame is the government. You see, they made promises to the doctors, and they are now neglecting the promises. So the ones to blame government. I think they should talk, mature talk, and know the way forward. And now now we want to go to Senegal, where a woman named Anta Babaka Ngom, who is 40 years a business executive, she has decided to go the way up and run for president in Senegal. So although many people say she will not win, but it's a positive concern because she's showing that there can be a gender equality. I believe she can be voted for. First thing she said is that she will look for our young girls and young and women. She said she will create many jobs for women and create a bank to help in women independence. And what do you think about that, Collins? Do you think that Anta Babaka will be elected as the president of Senegal?
I think her just vying for the position is showing courage enough, showing that it has come to a time in Africa where women can challenge for these leadership positions. Because a lot of times in Africa you don't associate women with being leaders. The place of women has not traditionally been seen as being that of a leader, except when it comes to the household setting. But through women empowerment, you're seeing that it's actually working. Because if you see a woman actually standing to be a president, it shows us that our democracies are indeed growing, and it will reach a time where people are elected not because of their gender, the color of their skin, their tribal affiliations, but because of what they possess and what they speak of as a people. So yeah, that's what I read into from that situation there.
Yeah, thank you, Collins, for that. I can see Fred Bonkongo sending in more comments saying, I remember sometimes back when Bessie J was attacked and he had to fly to Nairobi, Kenya for treatment. It's high time we wipe the messes in our governance system. I think he's reacting to what we talked about happening in Uganda. And Fred will also say that I honestly don't like sad stories. The Kenyatta University tragedy was really heartbreaking. May our Lord protect our brothers and sisters in school so painful indeed. And then he also says that critically analyzing the philosophical tradition of modern governments, you recognize that we do not have democratic governments in Africa. This is why Africa has uh, autocratic government system. So that is what Sedman is saying. And on to some more news. Egypt increases fuel prices following the depreciation of local currency. You know, things have been happening. A lot of prices here and there shifting, especially here in Kenya. But now we are seeing that Egypt also, the Egyptian government, have taken it upon themselves to raise its fuel prices. It just happened this last Friday in a move that is bound to exacerbate inflationary pressures on a already struggling population. So, what is happening? The new prices were announced on the cabinet's Facebook page and came into effect Friday morning, this past Friday. So, the prices of diesel, which is the main fuel for transport in Egypt, has increased significantly. We have also seen that other prices have increased, like, for example, let me quote them. The price of diesel, which is the main fuel for transport of people and goods, rose from 8.5 Egyptian pounds, that is roughly $0.18, all the way to $0.21 per liter. And then also we see that Egypt, which is a net import of energy, increased the price of 95 octane gasoline to 13.5 Egyptian pounds. That is about $0.29 per liter from 12.5 pounds. You can imagine, which is $0.27 per liter. So what you're seeing is that indeed in terms of inflation in Africa is really becoming a menace. We saw South Africa experiencing that issue, Ghana, Kenya also coming in, Nigeria. Inflation is coming in very strongly. For example, we know while we were young, a loaf of bread used to cost around 20, 30, 35 shillings thereabout. And the people who are even before us, they tell us that there's some time a loaf of bread used to cost around 5 shillings. Okay, I'm sure none of us were alive during those days. But so you can imagine, right now it's going for about 55 Kenya shillings. Inflation is coming up very, very, very high and strongly. I don't know if the economies in Africa will be able to be able to withstand that. And it is now getting a little bit worried, because if you see Egypt, which is one of the strongest economy in Africa, having such kind of issues, I'm sure now the likes of the people who defend the KK government in Kenya will now say, hii hata yetu imeshuka, mafuta ya kwetu imeshuka. So I'm sure people like Maina Olushasha, who goes around with cars, they are the one who knows this feeling, whether it is increasing or decreasing. But that is what is happening in Egypt. Also, I can see a comment from Fred Van Congo saying that, Minor, your heavenly sent CS said people are jealous of her with the work she's doing. I have never seen such an incompetent government in the minds of a crisis. It's not time to give such stories. That is Fred Van Congo. Thank you. Yeah.
It's indeed not time to give such stories. And I wish you would have seen the comments on Twitter. Some of them can't be mentioned on this platform, but Kenyans, when they go at someone, they go at them full force. And I hope you guys can just go to X and scroll through that thread. Otherwise, in Niger, they've ended their military agreement with the USA. So previously, what used to happen is that the US had a military base in Niger. From there, they could launch their missions throughout the Sahel region, and about 1,000 US troops had been stationed there. And as you know, what happened in Niger, there was a military takeover. So currently, the head of their government is someone from the military. And recently, a team from the USA came to look at basically what was happening in Niger, and they put Niger at fault for working with foreign governments which are not that friendly to the USA. Niger was accused of working with Iran and Russia, which are two countries that don't get along very well with the USA. And Niger was not very pleased with the USA trying to sort of police what the people of Niger want to do or their ways. So in a form of retaliation, they cut off these ties. So US military men can no longer be based in Niger. And I think this is just a testament of the African spirit rising now, because Africans have realized that they're in charge of their own destinies, and their destinies don't have to be carved out for them by other nations. So people are standing out. That's why you see revolutions taking place in West Africa mostly. But I hope it will come to a time when all Africans realize that together, united, we can build such a strong economy and such a strong power within the world, that we can sort of overlook all these differences and see that we are Africans, and Africa is our business, and try to build Africa as Africans and not keep on relying on foreign help for the growth of our nation.
Yeah. Washira, you discussed earlier about rise in fuel prices. In the future, we'll be telling our kids that bread was 65 shillings and they'll be shocked. Hey, ulikuwa mwaka gani? I also want to thank Fred Congo. He has been our panelist. Although he doesn't show up his face, he communicates through text. I want to thank him, and we hopefully want him to come in a panelist and we be live to be seen everywhere in the world. Now back to the topic. There has been a demand has been increase in demand in sugary sweets in this Ramadan period. Muslims are using sugary sweets as a refreshment, and stores around Africa have recognized that there has been increase in demand of sugary sweets, and we hope that the economy will stabilize through. And Collins, the way you talk with Omar, the relationship is still hard. We are waiting for Al-Fitr. We are still good friends with the Muslims. I hope they will invite me.
Okay. We hope they will invite you, Mina. So I can see more comments from Fredburn. Fredburn is saying, they're talking of depreciating currency in Egypt. Do you think what's happening in the Kenya shilling against the dollar is or will it shilling against the dollar is or will it be sustainable over time? So I'm not an economist to comment much on it, but the question that I was asking actually Minor the other day is this: whatever is happening with the Kenyan currency against the US currency, we ask ourselves a question: is the Kenyan currency getting stronger, or is the US dollar getting weaker? That's the question. Because right now we know the US dollar is facing a lot of challenges around the world. And then, so when we seeing that, the comparison right now, I think the dollar is going at around $1 is about 130 something Kenya shillings, and it's some time back it was all the way at 160. I'm sure people who do online writing, they were rejuvenating and they were very happy during those days. So that's the question. And then we get to understand after they have paid the Eurobond part of it, the Kenyan currency was getting a little bit stable. So the question that I ask myself, and I'd like an economist to help me, is the Kenyan shilling getting stronger, or it was just an event that was unforeseen, or is the US dollar getting weaker? So that's the question I think that somebody can be able to help me answer. However, there's something that caught my attention, and it caught my attention in a manner that is not really good, because discrimination has been there for a very long time, and I know football lovers, or I don't know if I can use that. Let me not use that term, but people who love football to the core, especially the English football, whatever, they might understand this. Whenever a game starts, we see that the players, they do that. They kneel, as a stand against discrimination and racism. And right now, I was reading a report. I know this is outside the continent, but I just got my attention. I was reading a report from UK, and it says that non-black former soccer players in England were 50% more likely than their black counterparts to progress into management. And that is a report that was published this past Tuesday. Ask yourself that question: how many, maybe Minor Literature can be telling us, how many black players in England, we have seen them progressing into management compared to their non-black counterparts. Very few. And then another thing that you get to realize is even the study showcases that, and this study was done as a study into coaching diversity done by a UK-based advocacy group, Black Footballers Partnership, that is known as the BFP. It also highlighted the ongoing disparity in the sport and concluded black managers or assistants were also 41% more likely to be fired. So, it's just, you get to wonder what the hell is happening in that place, because you get to see that most of the people who are actually, not a good chunk of the players in the English, leagues, are people of black descent. Now, this discrimination comes, and okay, at this particular time, it's something that has been talked about for a very, very long time. And now, a study that has just been done recently, when we think the world is progressing, especially in the world of football, a game that is supposed to bring the world together, despite of your background, and then we see such kind of cases that black people, and some of them, they play really, really well, and because of them the game is whatever it is today. Without them it wouldn't be where it is today. So it's really sad. It's really a sad state of affair. And because I know Maina Odishasha is the the one who loves football more here. Not that we do not, but he's the one who is more into it. Can tell us what he thinks of that, because it really saddens my heart to hear such kind of things, and the way we love and we enjoy, following what happens there.
Yeah, I enjoy football a lot, and try as you might to hide things like this, they exist, and we have to admit that they exist. And like you said, before every match, people take the knee in a fight or in a stand against racism. But these things exist, and you hear of cases of banana peels being thrown at black players. You hear of cases of black players being called monkeys, and sometimes, I like to say, why don't you go where you are appreciated? Because try to imagine how the football in Africa would look like if all these people who are being discriminated against for their skin color said, you know what, there's somewhere where I am valued for having this skin color. There's somewhere where if I could go, I stand as being a hero, a champion. So why not come to Africa and build African football as opposed to staying somewhere where they might not be as valued as perhaps they would like to or they need to be valued. And then for those of us who are lovers of the internet, I know last week you experienced problems because for us here in Kenya, for instance, last Sunday from about 9 p.m. there was no internet connection, and this is due to multiple cable failures. Our internet is mostly through fiber optic cables. So part of these cables in the west of Africa and some of them in the Red Sea developed failures. So that's why people who stream games on the internet, people who like to basically use the internet a lot last week have been experiencing a lot of challenges. And sometimes there's nothing worse than a slow internet connection. You're trying to load something and then it loads, it goes up to 90%, and then it starts reloading 0%. And last week that was the situation here in Africa. But it has since been resolved and everything has been restored back to normal. And it just goes to show you how a simple thing can affect an entire continent. Something as simple as a cable can affect an entire continent. But like I said, everything has been resolved. And I know, Jeff, you like streaming a lot. I don't know if you're affected as much as I was, because last week I bought airtime like 3 times, thinking that it was my phone which had the problem. But it looks like the problem was not from my end, Jeff. Yeah.
I don't want to comment badly, but although you bought airtime 3 times, I believe your team did not lose. And I have a concern about the racism of black coaches. You see, when a Mzungu, a white person comes into Kenya, you see children very overjoyed seeing a white man. They are appreciated. But I have a question to both of you. When the white person comes in Kenya, aseme anaenda shopping, people tend to overprice because they have seen the Mzungu. Is that exploitation? Can you regard to that?
Jeff, do you want us to speak as businessmen or because for me, I don't believe it's right to exploit others. But if you're talking from of it from a business point of view, to them they expect this thing to be a certain price. So if you were to tell them the price is this, which is perhaps higher than that which will charge a Kenyan citizen, even when you visit our national parks, the charges are not the same for them as they are for us. So being a citizen, there are certain privileges you enjoy, but sometimes people take it too far. So something that goes for 20 shillings, some people price it at 1,000 shillings, which is exorbitant, and that's being a fraudster. But if something were to be 20 shillings and then you tell them this thing is 30 shillings, I don't believe you are wrong because you're a businessman and you the business of making profit.
Yeah, one thing Jeff should know is that in the market, the way the market operates, maybe an economist might tell him better, is that there's always that disparity. And then it is willing buyer, willing seller, but it is wrong for us to, exaggerate these prices. However, one thing you should note is that sometimes the market or the economy favors the people who are within. Because even if you go to the US, for example, you will go there as a student, for example, if you're going to do your master's or your studies there, you will be charged as an international student. Don't because you're black does not mean you're not an international. You are also international once you go there, and once you go there, you'll be charged at the international student rate. So it's the same thing. But what happens now when they come here and we exaggerate the prices, especially in places where it is not justified? I think it is totally wrong. But also there's that aspect where the market or the economy or whatever we found it that way, and it's something that we have been also trying to understand, because you go to the parks and you see that for East Africans, for non-East Africans, and for the non-African, I fail to understand that. But I don't think it is right for us to exaggerate those prices that much. Fredman Congo says that minor, it is high time USA keep of African affairs. Let them go fight for TikTok and other affairs if that concern them. I believe we are able to handle our own affairs and correct our mess. And he also says, Jeff, did you just say sugar is sweet? Anyway, thanks for your appreciation, man. I am humble. That is Fred from Congo.
Ah,
Fred Boy Mukonga was to give you an idea, a business idea on how we can sell mutura. No Mzungus don't know muturas. We can sell that a small house for 10,000 and earn a living. Now back to in South Sudan. South Sudan has closed all schools in preparation for 45 degrees heat wave. The major concern, I was shocked because they have not said they will close the schools until when. And I don't think closing the schools will help to overcome the heat wave. I believe the government should try and develop air conditioners around schools to help students proceed learning. Also, the CS said that anyone who will be found opening schools during that period, their licenses will be withdrawn. Where colleagues, what do you think the government of South Sudan should do to help overcome the 45-degree situation?
I think they might be justified in shutting down the schools because I don't know, Jeff, you live in Nairobi and the heat that has been striking us here in Nairobi, you see Washira walking around with ice cubes because it's that hot. You see people walking around with fans because it's hot. And you hear of people talking in movies about things like summer, heat waves. We had never experienced that before. But this year, it has been a lot. You get out of the house at 6:30 p.m. and you're already sweating. The sun is up. It's extremely hot. So I think they might be justified in doing that because they say prevention is better than cure. They might open the schools, yes, Jeff, but at what expense? Because I think they've done that from the point of view that maybe these children going to schools, maybe the ventilation might not be enough, the structures might not be sufficient to protect them from the heat. So if that has been done to protect their people, I believe there were experts who sat down and saw it right to do that. And for their decisions, they are justified to do so because all they're doing is just protecting the lives of their school children. Because if you realize, even in the States, when it gets to winter, sometimes the children don't go to school. Doesn't mean that school is not important to them, but of importance is their life as compared to just going to school. Yeah.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah, it's very hot out here, Maina, because right now it's raining outside, but I still feel the heat while I'm in the house. So you can imagine. So what happens now there for in South Sudan? I think it's even different because, hey, this climate change thing is real. People think it's a joke, but it's indeed really affecting us as a continent, not only as a continent, but even as a globe. Now, I think with that, we can be able to wrap it up. Until next time, where we'll get to inform our people of what is happening in the continent. I would like to appreciate everybody who has watched us live and everybody who will watch this later. And also, in a special manner, I would like to thank Mina and Jeff for always being here and updating us what is happening in the continent. And also, in a very special manner, we thank Fred Bonkongo, always sparing his time and always commenting and sharing with us his knowledge and his opinions on the broadcast comment section, live comment section. We hope that one day Fredbon will come on board live and we'll be able to hear from him directly. We'll hear from the horse's mouth. With that, I'd like to wish everybody a good night and a good week ahead. And again, we stand in solidarity with the KU fraternity for losing the 11 students. We hope that and we say that let their soul rest in peace. And for those who are still recovering from the injuries, we wish them quick recovery. And we pray that such kind of things do not repeat themselves in the future. With that, I'd like to wrap it up and say that my name is Mutazi Washirawanyaga. Ishinegirana cia Mobimu Bori. Thayo, Thayo, Thayo. Have a good time. Have a good week ahead. Bye bye.